I've got Joanne Stone. She's in Toronto, apparently. And Scott Seivwright's in Scotland, or maybe they're in either. I'm not sure. We were trying to figure that out. Fantastic to have you along today. How are you today?
You know what? Can I just sit there and say I am so totally impressed that you can pronounce Scott's last name.
Well, you see, a long time ago,
It's so well.
a long time ago in a galaxy far away, Scott and I did a cast together, and he took a while to teach me. It's very simple. You've got a sieve, and he's always right. And sieve and right, it's a Seivwright.
Perfect.
There we go.
I see.
And we got an extra runner today joining us. Fantastic.
That's awesome.
All right, well, let's get the stuff over that I need to do before we get going. If you want to stay connected with Remote AF and at Talking Remote, join our Remote AF community. Go to the right-hand top button on remoteaf.co. Click the community button. Join us at Discord. We've got a fantastic remote community talking about many things, including sustainability, which is what we're going to talk about today. Whilst you're at it, if you're interested in catching up on our dynamically adaptive organisation, say that 3 times fast, you can get the white paper in the show notes. Let's start without further ado with sustainability and what agilists can do today. So let's kick this off with Tony starting with the black hat and saying to you guys, is this something that agilists can really do? Can we really make a difference to sustainability and the and what's happening in our whole environment? What's your thoughts, guys?
I think it's really all in the definition of difference, don't you think? Because for me, I think that yes, we do have the power. I really truly believe we can. I think it's something we can. It's something we can choose to do, but the impact, I think that this is where a lot of people can struggle too. Is like, how can little old me, make this big impact, right? It can be really quite challenging, right? And I think it very much depends on who you can influence, what you can do, where you can start, to see the kind of impact that you can actually make. So I do believe, yes, like my answer was yes, they can make an impact and they can make a difference. But the difference that they make is all their choice to make, right? So, the level that they can influence. That's my thought. But
Scott, Scott, your thoughts?
Yeah, I come at it from a different angle. I'm really working with organizations. So we've got a couple of tenders out just now, and what we're tendering in that space is it's around about something called ESG, which is the environment, the social and governance elements that organizations have been asked to report on more and more. Definitely in Europe, definitely the European Union. More and more of the investment boards are looking for this as well, and it's a criteria for assessing, companies' goodness. It equates to things like companies that have high ESG ratings are usually more profitable. They have happier workforces. They're more tied into what the regulator wants, so they seem to be good citizens. So that attracts investment. This also attracts employees. Key thing that I'm doing there is often to do all of this stuff that an organization needs to do can be a bit overwhelming. So the elements that we can bring from agility are around about, WIP, so limiting work in progress, getting things flowing so they can actually, see like the things that they want to do happening, measuring them to see it, and where things aren't working fast enough to ideate around about getting things to work faster. So it's really that there's a lot in the kind of that enterprise agile or some of the things in SAFe as well are quite useful, like lean portfolio or in flight levels, just for visualizing what you want and then working out which of the bets you're placing to try and get your outcomes. And the outcomes, again, we're looking at there is E in the environment space. So are you reducing your carbon? Are you investing in assets? Are your scope 1, 2, and 3 in carbon, are they getting reduced? In the social side, you might be looking at your reporting on diversity and your diversity of your supply chain, but also how you're treating your supply chain and the employees and how you're treating them. And on the governance side, it's actually, whether or not you've got good governance structures in place, whether or not they're working, whether or not they're in line with what the regulator wants and the compliance items they've got. And all of that can become a big program. So don't run it like a big 3-year program. Yeah. work out the things in there that are most profitable, that'll unlock value, and almost treat it like a value stream. And also do this to kind of reduce waste, which will improve your profits, and be more customer centric. And as you get more customer centric, that should increase your profit. So in this hard time, what I'm telling everyone is don't have an ESG program and an efficiency program and an agile program. Run them all at once, and use them to find the value. So I think it's essential.
So I guess the question that I get asked when I talk about this, so I know I'm playing black hat, and as we said on the show before, don't shoot the message. Was is it naive to think that just a few Kanban boards and a little bit of agile can make a dent? Right. I guess that's the thing that people say to me all the time is how do you think that's going to, change the way that organizations think about environmental sustainability and what's happening in the world today? So that's the question I really want to answer. I've got some thoughts around that, and I'll answer that myself in a moment. But Joanne, what do you, Scott? What do you think there?
Are you pointing to me?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think there's this aspect when you sit there and say, here's a Kanban board and here's what was the other thing you said? I think there's another tool you said. I don't think it's the tools. I think it's the mindset change that I don't think it's enough, right? Like I think we know this as transformation people in order to start to do any of these programs, especially in the sustainability and the climate aspect, right? Because from a climate perspective, if we have to look at changing, the way that, one of our friends, Joanne, she's proposing, any of the foods that come in for events or have no meat in it whatsoever, right? And so if you do that, you can reduce carbon hugely. But that also requires, a change of, a mindset, change of desire, change of what you typically do. And we don't typically think about the planet. We don't typically think about the impact that we're making to the systems, to our ecosystem that's around us. We don't typically think about the waste of the system that it produces and how we can reuse it, because what we're typically thinking about is profit, right? And we're typically thinking about what can we do to make these things effective and efficient, so that we can thrive in this profit and make this profit and live. So, and so I think this aspect is we just need to, just like we've done this in Agile so many times, is we need to also start to help with that mindset shift and and these things are like what I would always say, wicked problems, and require like teams of people to kind of work together. So, which means we need to be able to bring in the collective and work with them as a group, as a team, to kind of identify what is it that we want to touch on sustainability, like what is it that we need to do. So it's not, to me, it's not just these specific tools of Jira or anything like that that's going to make it or make the dent. That's just like a thing that holds our ideas, right? It's great for transparency, and yes, we need that as well for sure. Because that helps us a lot with data and everything else to support what we're doing, especially with what Scott was saying in terms of governance and reporting back. We definitely need it, right? And we also need all this other great work that we need to do and start bringing in the planet into our discussions more, and sustainability and that into our discussions more, is a total change in what we do today. So, and we're good at that. We're good at change. Like we've been doing it, and we've been beat up many times by people who don't believe in it in Agile. And we know there's a lot of people that don't believe in sustainability, right? So, why not kind of utilize our skill sets of transformation and change to kind of help with that? So it's that state of mind and that being aspect that we need to support as well. That's what comes up for me.
Scott?
I think the other thing is I've got a lot of Agilist friends that are working in car manufacturers trying to build electric cars, and in power transformation and energy companies that are trying to find greener ways to do things. And a lot of people are bringing a lot of kind of green products to the market, and they're all building agility. Here's my take on it. These new startups, almost like Greenfield, that are using agility, they're going to be getting ahead of companies that are traditionally not using agility. So the whole piece about, it's almost easier to set up a brand new end-to-end automated process that's really focused on your customers. It takes great feedback in and develop it that way and accelerate it that way than it is to, take an old company, where everything's split and everything's siloed and all the departments fight. And now now collectively they've got to publish to the stock market and the shareholders and the analysts how they're doing. And part of that is they need to now be telling their sustainability story. And these are, and they've got no internal mechanisms for their data or the data structure. And if they get anything wrong in the data, they're accused of greenwashing and hauled over the coals and the front page.
God, yes.
So the risk reduction, the value, opening up the value, and also developing your brand and kind of being a modern company and being able to accelerate to change. Yeah, companies that don't do that, and agility is one of the best mechanisms for doing that. Companies that don't do that are going to be at the back of the pack, and the companies at the back of the pack are also going to be the ones that are going to get the higher investment rates. So they're they have to pay more for the money they get in. They're probably going to find that they lose tenders. There's more and more of this is coming into the procurement tendering cycle. What your ESG ratings, and then over and above that as well, employees won't want to work there because employees will start looking at this and say, well, this company's rated really well for their for their social, for their employee rating, and they've got a purpose, and they're trying to do something about things like fires and things behind us. So I want to work there, as opposed to company X on the road.
And that's where I come from as well. So it's a great segue. I didn't get him to do that, but that's great. Is that I also think it's about agilists. We have access to lots of organisations, right? And we work for different organisations all over the world. And it's also about us choosing how we're going to influence. So, for example, I've had the opportunity to work with an organisation that is actually now putting in a lot of our renewable energy sources. So inserting yourself into those organisations and helping them be successful and speeding up the speed of change to deliver those things is actually an impact that we're actually able to do. And if you're watching this today, think about those organisations that you want to work for. Think how you can help them right shift and get as far as they can, as quickly as they can, because that's only going to benefit us. So that's one way. The second one for me is the influence factor, right? We have access to amazing agilists. Get into boardrooms, they get into leadership. This is where we can make influence and make change. So for me, that's a big thing. The third thing that I bring to the table with that is remote working. So because I come from a remote agility framework, obviously, one of our key factors that we founded the organisation on was sustainability. We believe that if you did remote working right, and we're not saying you have to remote work all the time, but if you do it well and you do it right, and we do it in a way that allows people and more people to work from home, we're actually going to save ourselves. And in terms of that, there's some really great studies just come out from PNAS that you can see on our site. And I'm just going to read some numbers, and then we can jaw over that, guys. Workers who work 1 day a week from home reduce their work-related carbon emissions by 2%.
Wow.
Hybrid workers who work 2 to 4 days a week from home reduce their carbon emissions by 29%. But the big kicker is workers who work fully remote reduce their carbon emissions by roughly 54%, right? Now, people are sitting saying, really? Well, I'm living testament to that. I live on an island, and pre-pandemic, I would drive my car to the train station. So I would drive, over 200 Ks a week. Then I'd catch a train, and I'd do that every single day. I don't do that anymore. And in fact, I'm lucky if I use a tank of petrol in my car a month. So you can see the change in that. So that's the living testament. So what's your thoughts on that? So I know I threw a lot at you.
Well, what really came up for me right now, and combining what Scott said in terms of ESGs, and I'm not sure if a lot of companies are actually thinking this way, but if you think of some of the large banks that are in Toronto, we employ over like 40,000 people sometimes. If we had the majority of that workforce, working 3 to 4 times at home, they basically, I think they would have probably solved for some of their carbon footprint reporting. right? But as we were talking about before too, there's this tension though, right? So, we have that human connection that is so important for us. And so there's this tension of actually being able to, keep that connection going so we can thrive, but we also need the ability to live in the planet. So there's this aspect of, individuals need that kind of connection, right? To go into the office and meet with others. How often, how frequent, I don't know, but maybe we leave that up to the individuals versus telling everybody they have to go into the office. I think and a lot of this, I know there's a lot of going back and forth about the remote stuff too, which is really difficult for people. But there's a management perspective, which is there. And I think this also falls into actually ESG related stuff that Scott, we're talking about, is that they have a lot of real estate and a lot of buildings in like downtown Toronto. Huge amount of real estate is taken up by the banks and by the telecommunications and a bunch of other consulting firms. Like we have huge tech stuff in here. If those buildings are left empty, right, then they're paying all that money and rent and stuff like that. So there's an aspect of that space they want to keep, and could they do something else, like do green farming, right, in that particular space instead? Like I bet you there's a lot of creative things that could potentially happen that can help these companies, but there was something about the real estate aspect as well. So we got to factor all these things, but I do think these are great stats, and I think they can be useful for companies for sure.
Yeah, Scotty.
Yeah, I mean, travel's just gone through the roof. After post pandemic, I've been traveling, going to London and things. That the hotel prices have gone through the roof. The travel costs have gone through the roof. The trains are busier than ever. And even if we just reflect back to when we were in pandemic mode and things were a lot quieter, we still got things done. I think in times we were more productive. Yeah, certainly. For me, and this is an interesting thing. I'm going to take a longer term view now. I'm going to take a longer term view, and I'm going to look into the future and on the trends. One of the trends I think we've got is we're going to need more and more innovative solutions that are going to need more and more people from around about the world to work together. Yeah, and physically to get people together to work on problems in Bangladesh or to work on problems in India or work on problems in South America. They'll never have the access. Secondly, one of the things we did when we did Agile Try Reflect with the 900 events around the world, we built up a database of information. And people in Africa have been telling me that since everything's gone back into person, they've had a lot less access to people, a lot less access to learning, a lot less access to things. So there's something about a level playing field as well, that the more we do remote, the more we can share that learning. The final thing is, and I've been talking about this a lot, one of the biggest problems we're going to have in the future is lack of people. Now, everyone's going to look at me and go like, but we're going to be an 11 billion planet. I really think that we're at peak now. If you look at, if you look at the West, if you look at China, if you look at Japan, and even India, the populations are dropping. As we get more education and as we lean into, just more of the world reaching a kind of higher standard. So by standard, I mean, people have toilets in their house, people have electricity in their house, and they're not burning wood in the house. And, and just as all general standards raise, they predict population will drop again. Yeah, so I think there's going to be a lack of experts, a lack of people, especially as the generations, move into more of the retired section. And I think you're going to get a lot more access to retired experts on a part-time basis globally with remote working than you ever would in trying to coax 65-year-olds, 70-year-olds to get back into a kind of a 2-hour commute to go into downtown Brisbane or downtown Toronto or downtown London, to go and talk in an office. Yeah, so I think the trend will be we're going to be more networky, we're going to be more mixed in our learning, and a lot of the expertise is going to be held in the aging population who just won't want to travel.
And I guess the thought process that I have with all this is, where does the Agilist kind of fit into the remote working? And for me, it really fits into. I mean, we have a friend of ours, I talk to all the people around the world and all the different things that they've been doing over the past little while. I've been, understanding how agility fits into sustainability through case studies, like over the last 2 years. And one person that we know, which is Marilyn, she's actually bringing the planet to the center of a lot of the conversations, and doing planet retrospectives and a lot of things based in teams themselves. So working with specifically the team to talk about what they would want to do around it. And I think from our perspective, I mean, this is where a lot of us agilists do shine when we're working with our teams, having team agreements about how we can bring in the planet, right, and how we want to take care of our own carbon footprint. So even though like there's this top-down push because of the investors are all pushing to kind of have ESG, and that's a great thing because that gives that the top-down push for us to start doing this more. I also think we need to have that bottom-up kind of look at these things as well, which are looking at what is it exactly from that team's perspective that they can do, right? Versus this is a corporate strategy that everyone has to recycle. Well, we know how the recycling policies have worked, not really well, right? So it really has to kind of come into the teams as well. They have to buy in it. They have to be part of it, right? And I think that's why I love Scott and all the work that he's doing, because we know that this has to be coming from the teams to actually want to do these things as well, right? So I think the conversations, and we can really help have those conversations so that we can figure out as a team how we want to use remote working as something that's going to help with sustainability.
So there's another thing I wanted to sort of bring to the table, and I know Loch Ness Monster. Come on.
Oh, the next one, bring it.
all I did was remote working in Scotland, remote working in Canada, and remote working in Brisbane, and I got a paddle board, a forest fire, and a Nessie.
Very nice. All right, so one of the reasons I brought you wonderful people on was for the community entertainment, but as well was also that there's a network of people out there now, agilists, who are coming together and coalescing together, right? And we're just a small representation of that group. So I wanted to shout out about that group today. I'd like you to talk a little bit about that, because what I wanted to make sure that people heard from today was some of the bigger things that are happening that they could get involved in, that they could make a difference. Because people will be sitting there going, "Oh, that's great, I can make some effect here, but how can I do?" So we're not just thinking about this in singularity; we're thinking of this as a group. So, Joanne, I could see you were champing a bit then.
Well, it's kind of interesting because we had a group of us come together this morning. So it's kind of funny that there is a group that's out there, because there's many groups which are actually trying to figure out how we can bring sustainability, improve the way that we do this at some of our conferences, like the Agile conference, right? So we're talking about, we did interviews with a bunch of people to kind of figure out how we can improve it. And so the cool thing was, a group of us are looking at all the interview results and going, wow, could we do this? What could we do? And what could we pull in from the past and stuff like that? So yes, there is this group of people that are doing some great things, and they want to continue to do great things as a collective, which is beautiful. They all want to support each other to do great things. And there is a lot of great stories. And it's funny, one of the things that you started to talk about, Tony, earlier, one of the great stories that I know of is Carolyn Schwab, who's actually working in Canada. And she is also, she was a very profitable person in terms of her independent consulting. So she was doing a lot of independent consulting in a lot of different groups, and she did really well. But she said, I don't want to do that anymore. I really want to work with a climate company. And she went into that company, and she's working with the leaders. She's working with the board. She's got them changing their vision. She's got them including looking at the whole system. She's influencing a lot of people. And her whole thing is, let's get in there and do it. And she wants to practice planet over profit, right? And she's a big proponent for that. But I love the fact that she kind of went ahead and kind of did this, because this was the most important thing for her, was to be able to take her skills, the way that she can work, the way that she can help companies. And she went in there and she started doing that. And so So, I mean, that's me going internally in the company, but then there's people like another, and I'll just talk about Canada right now. But another friend of mine in Newfoundland, Ron Laudadio, who is bringing in business agility techniques to a local government. Right. So this isn't about sustainability. I mean, this isn't about climate. This is all about some of the sustainability goals and stuff like that. And but for like from his perspective, it was all about this particular community not really talking well with each other and understanding what the real need was. So the people who were running the community or the local government, had a different view. We need to bring in more people into the community because the more people that can travel here, and let's make us a destination so more revenue can come in. Again, profit thinking, right? And Ron got in there and had a whole discussion with them and figured out what they really wanted was a local restaurant, right? And not local restaurants, sorry, a local grocery store is what I mean. And so, because the grocery store that was there before was shut down, and the nearest grocery store was 2 hours away. And most of the people there are the average age, I think, are over 60, and the average income is under 30. And and what was happening was they don't have money to pay for gas, nothing else. So it was like, wow, it was an incredible finding. And what did he do? He used lean coffee, and he used open space techniques modified to kind of like work the community and talk to them. So Carolyn's in a company doing great work that she does, and Ron is doing it within his local community. Right. And so, those are just really sweet, beautiful stories. But then you have Shiraz from the UK, or Kuber Shiraz from the UK, who does prosperity and peace. And he did a mini MBA program down in the Middle East after his brother was shot. And once he figured out and murdered, actually, once he figured out that the cause of the murder was the main cause was due to marginalization, he wanted to start helping the people in the Middle East, in one of the countries that was there. And so what was interesting was he used a lot of techniques that we had to set up a mini MBA program to help people on the streets be able to educate themselves and start to be able to support their families, get rid of, their mortgages, be mortgage free, all these great things that he's been doing. And how did he do that? Well, he start with where he was. He knew where he could influence. He runs a consulting organization in the UK. He's a very smart man, right? So he was able to kind of come in there and set up this program because this is where he was really good, and he utilized iterations to test it all out and to validate it, and lean startups, and so like he utilized all these great things, right? And he is making an impact, and he has data, and it's really, really cool to see some of the stuff that he's doing. But that's just 3 of like 40, and then Scott can tell his own story. He's amazing, right? And you can see the stuff that he's doing. It's so cool. Like he's getting a whole community frothing up, right? So all about ESG, and he's again helping us push the stuff out there, right? So, there's amazing stories, and I'll stop there because I can continue on for like another hour.
We couldn't stop her, Scott. We couldn't stop
her. No, I never do. I like to energy. So when we're together, I get a lot of energy from her. So that's lovely too. I think Cliff Hazel wrote something on LinkedIn, and I don't often reply to stuff, but it was about the drop in the consulting at the moment and how everything's gone a bit quieter and that, and how agilists are kind of seeing it as like the end of agile and things like this. There's something about the agile community. We almost think we're special somehow, or we're different from business, and we say we're over here and what are they doing, and they're canceling our contracts. And one of the things I pointed out was, we're in a really, really difficult trading time. We're in a really difficult place. There's a lot. The world is very VUCA, and one thing we could do was we can complain that that nobody's buying our certificates, right? Which I'm hearing a lot of, or no one's buying our training courses, or we could actually reframe this and say, with all this complexity and with all this difficulty, business has got a huge opportunity and drive, and some of the investment plans. I think Ford raised $2 trillion, to modernize. Yeah. So with all this modernization happening, all these new technologies coming in, all this change everywhere, all this modernization across the rest of the world, as agilists, we should be throwing ourselves into that work and not trying to be a separate community of special sages on the stage. Yeah. And we should be the yeast in the loaf, rising all the bread. I am 54. I cannot remember another time, and this is including the internet and including the smartphone. I think there's actually more of an impetus for change now with sustainability, the planetary challenges, the need to do something about the rising temperature, the need to do something about the fact that we've still got people that don't have toilets or don't have electricity in their homes. Yeah, and that whole global challenge, yeah, where we would need to work together more now than ever. If one thing I would say, agilists are almost like a secret worldwide fraternity. So we're in 3 countries. We're talking about this. We're not talking about Australia first or Canada first or Scotland first. We're talking about how can we make business across the world solve the world's problems. So we're almost, as agilists, I notice we tend to even like bypass nationalism, which I love.
Yeah, and I think that's the great thing, why I brought you on today, because I wanted that platform for people to hear that this is actually happening around the globe. And there's, other people who are involved in this movement. Yoda Eckstein's doing some amazing things, and Atkins, right? And those pieces of work that they're pushing from there, and there's a collective coming together around this.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's important for people to understand that and hear about those things so that they can get involved, even if it's learning and taking back to where they are. Joanne?
Yeah, well, it's interesting. The one thing that's still coming up through me is this aspect of us as agilists and our superpowers, right? And I know that's some of the stuff that Lisa talks about too. and one of the things that we can do is even though we have that coaching aspect of us, right? We're really great with people. We can create great teams. We're really great at the business side of it too. Like we're business coaches, but we're also business coaches plus, right? So sure, yes, our title has been agile, we've been doing these great things, but we've been taught, I've learned so much more about running a business than I ever had before, right? I've learned so much more about what it's like to step into leadership. I've learned so much more about myself. I've learned so much more about how to work with the dynamics of teams. I'm an entrepreneur. Yes, I would sit there and say, yeah, we're a different type of folk because we hold all of that kind of knowledge. Not everybody does, but it's it's amazing to be part of this because I can go into a community and kind of roll up my sleeves and help them do these things. And I also can sit back and coach them. Right. And it's because I can do both. Right. So I think we're this powerhouse of people that maybe people don't recognize, what we do. Right. So, anyways, that's what came up for me. But Tony, I think I totally missed your question. I'm sorry, because that was still something that was staying in me.
No, that was pretty much around it, right? So I was just talking about the different parts. Look, for me, it's influence, right? We have a platform. Yeah. We have a platform of influences that's unique. Like while you said, Scott, agilists are, I think they're different. They are different in one unique piece. I feel is that they have a platform through many of the things that we do to talk to organizations where other people can't. And we also have a platform because of the way that we work and what we do. If you think about all of the conferences, if you think about those sorts of things that we attend, we have a captured audience a lot of time with very, influential executives, leaders. This is the influence part that we have that we should be choosing. And it goes back to that piece I said before about choosing where we want to influence and choosing perhaps where we want to work. So I think those platforms, we should be using those, You look at the Agile Americas and the Agile Australias and those sorts of things. In any of those conferences, you have an opportunity to get out there and actually get the message out. If you only infect one executive who goes back and says, I'm going to make a change, then you've made a big difference, right? This is not just, I say this to people all the time, this is not about us. This is, our time is running down. This is about our children and our children's children and what's going to be left for them. And surely that should be something that you should be thinking about.
Yeah.
I'll solve
the one thing that's coming up for me right now, sorry, and I know Scott will give you some space, sorry to take this space, but or not. The one thing that's coming up for me is that I think that that's the statement that we have the ability to influence our leaders and influence all of the, the executives and stuff like that. It's true. And the one thing I would add to it, I think that there's maybe about 20% of the Agilist population who are at that level, right? And I think if we really looked at, because I run a mentorship program too, and we have beginners, non-beginners, and leadership and coaching tracks. And every season, we run it twice a year. The one thing that comes up is, how do I influence leaders? And so what comes up for me, and I know this is just the community that I'm working with, but I think that there's the majority of the people that we're working with are in the Agilist space, which are Scrum Masters as well, right? They would say they don't feel like they have that ability to influence, right? Because they work on the team itself. So I think when we are thinking about who we can influence, we have to think about those who can only influence that specific area of their teams, which I think is the majority of the Agilists which are out there. And they're probably like going, okay, how can I do that? But then we also, and I love what you're saying, Tony, in terms of the point of, on the stage, that we need to be able to speak to that the bigger impact that we want to be able to make, and not just narrow it to the majority of the people who are there that would, pick up that skill set, for example. But,
I'd actually flip that a little bit, Joanne, just a tad though. When I talk to people who say that Scrum Master, they can only influence the team. The thing about that is that actually has an effect in its own right, because if you're affecting the teams and you're affecting the people of the organisation,
yeah, true.
They're actually they're your power to affect change upwards, right? Not always, but it's a tidal swell as it starts to happen.
So just to
and
build
I want
on
to
that,
do it more. Yeah, go ahead.
So just to build on that, and two spaces that we could think about. And again, if I could split myself into four just now, it'd be quite good, because there are 4 Scots working with 4 sets of people and 4 things.
I'm not sure the world's ready for that, Scott.
It is. Well, there's enough body mass, so we're good. Okay. The other thing I'm doing a lot of thinking with Joe. Fun story. I met Joe Stone out in Nashville at the Agile Alliance conference, and I met her and I went, "Oh my God, you're so similar to my friend Joanne in Scotland." Yeah, and I got them together, and they are so similar. Yeah, they're almost indistinguishable at distance from behind. Right? It's been very dangerous putting them together. So anyway,
we are. Yeah.
Well, what Joanne and I are looking at doing and having conversations with companies in Edinburgh, we're just starting early conversations and coming up with patterns. But two of the patterns that we're really coming up with is one around about the rise and growth of tech and the rise and growth of the CO2 from tech. Yeah. One of the stats we heard, by 2040, if we don't do anything, tech will be producing more carbon dioxide than the whole of the USA. Yeah. So there's actual stuff we can do in there. There's actionable stuff we can do in there. And that's stuff that Scrum Masters can do. You can have green stuff in your definition of done. You can look at compression. You can look at your storing. You can look at your retention policy. The second thing that I think is really, really exciting is so product owners and product development and product management and the whole product piece, making that green. So almost like getting green first. Because one of the things we know, we're going to have to rapidly change the products that are out there to work differently. Now, some of that is in our space might be tech, but thinking beyond that, pivoting, say from even your packaging, going over to mycelium and things like that. Changing the lifespan, the sockets on your phone and things like that. There's so much product design happening that if we can actually get these sustainability principles taught, if we can get product owners to think green as well as as everything else, and I still think that if you can prioritize for the best green solution that's also most profitable, you can actually get that down to a space where actually the green one might not be that different than the non-green one, but you've done the thinking early, you've done the sourcing early, you built your supply chain up early, and that's really exciting. So those 2 spaces alone. So the green in tech, and also the green products and green product development, I think are huge spaces that we can use our educational voices to lift people up to. Hi, Lucas.
Brilliant. Thanks, Lucas. Much appreciated, Lucas. I'll just pop it up there so that people can see that.
Lucas doesn't I talk in Scottish, which is like
neither do I.
Look, it's fantastic that people are getting something from this, because the reason that I even do this show is to be able to bring these things to people as well, Lucas. So thank you for that. One of the important things with this particular message from yourselves, though, now we're getting very close to the end of the show. How can people get involved with yourselves and the community that's actually starting to wrap around this? Because that's important here as well for people who are listening. So, Scott, Joanne, take it away.
So I'll sit there and say from my perspective, we do have some meetups which are out there, so you can join. There's a few LinkedIn groups where you can join in and into the conversation and get involved. So one of it is Agilists for Sustainability, and I know that's got you can speak to yours as well, but there's more that are out there. So and we're definitely trying to share all the rest. The other thing is that I run incubator projects for incubator sustainability projects on 3 months. So, getting in contact with me, is a way to be trying out your skills on a specific project, which is local. The one that we're working on is on the food bank in Toronto. So we're going to continue to keep, reaching out to the different projects which are out there and just be the incubator of these projects and bring in Agilists who want to make a difference, but they don't necessarily know where to start. The other thing is be on the lookout for, we're actually sharing all the stories of all the different people who have been making a difference, and so we're doing a magazine actually. So we have a magazine that's coming out hopefully shortly, within the next month or so. And then what we're going to do is have a magazine party, like a book that's coming out. And I got to have fun. Come on, this is a really tough space, right? So I like to include fun in this, but it's a great way that people can be part of some of and hear some of the stories and get involved with some of the stuff that's going on and be aware of all the great things and learn from some of the really great people, even if you don't go to the magazine. So some of that stuff will start coming out, and it'll be on we have a website, which we did our first conference in this year, called Agilists for Planet. So it'll be part of that as well. So yes, there's multiple ways to get involved. And if you have a story or you've been doing a lot of great things, I really want to know, because I love to share and connect people and connect communities and connect more of the awesome stuff that all these great people are doing. So yeah.
Scott, yourself?
Yeah, the other thing is we've started a meetup called the Good Company Way. And that meetup is a group of people around the world. We're looking at pulling people in who are specialists in the sustainability side to talk about what good companies should look like, how good companies can be there. So we're taking chief execs in, we're taking people in. The last talk was about carbon accounting, and for someone in New York, just explaining what all the companies are doing, thinking about that. We've got diversity people coming, we've got authors coming, we've got people from the UN coming. So it's a great place where you can actually watch. And the other thing is we're storing the videos up in YouTube. So there's a kind of resource there. So if you want to know something, you can go into it and have a look. Yeah. I think the other thing is there's 4 big things in companies. I always take I do executive coaching, so I'm always thinking about companies. The 4 big things in companies that are touch points here. So one would be in your product design. So in any organization, if you're anything near product, right, have a word about product and say, hey, can we do something a little bit about some experiments in sustainability or inclusion or just anything, or give a part of the profit from this product over to develop social enterprise in Africa or something. Then the next bit will be the physical premises and all the building and how you're operating there, and that's and remote working, not remote working. So have discussions about that with employers and on employee surveys. Make sure that your opinions are kind of highlighted. Yeah. The next thing there is your large companies will have shareholders and boards, and you yourself might be shareholders. So please use your shareholdings, to talk to board. I would really be surprised if most large organizations aren't giving about 40% of their reports now towards ESG. Yeah, because the E, the S, and the G cover up so much of a report. And the final bit there is. Most organizations have people in them who are very worried about the planet, who are very worried about where we're heading, and actually would like to do things, and they want to do things. So if anyone, so anyone in organizations in authority or any leadership positions, open up ways, communities of practice, or other ways that people can actually get involved and start allowing their fears and their concerns to be met through action. Yeah. So and if you tackle those 4 areas, if you look at those 4 areas, that's how you transform, big corporate. There's 90 keystone companies in the world that if we actually get them to change their behavior, could really make a dent in climate and in living conditions and in everything else around the world. Only 90, yeah. And one of the ways I think we get there is by coming up from smaller companies to bigger companies, and also the legislative push. Yeah, and the other thing is Mother Nature's going to help. And you know why Mother Nature's going to help?
She's giving it to us right now.
And it's going to get worse. If you thought, El Nino is kind of happened in the latter half of the year they start in, yeah?
It's already been declared in my half of the world, and we've already got fires, so...
Yeah, and it's a super El Nino. So, my wife's Mexican, so we're thinking about going over to Mexico. Mm-hmm. And it's already I'm thinking, well, what will it be like in a super El Nino year heading to that part of the world?
Correct. Guys, we're at the end of our time, and I thank you so much for spending this time. We could, as usual, we could continue talking forever. It's usually the way I'm talking remote, but our time is at an end. Those websites and those meetups, you'll pop those across to me, and I'll put them in the show notes for those that are watching, so that they can consume those. Or you can reach out. You can reach out to Joanna and Scott or myself. We're all very approachable. You find us all on LinkedIn. I can guarantee you that you will get a response immediately. It's been fantastic having you on at Talking Remote, Joanne, Scott. Thank you again today, and I hope everybody enjoyed it.
Final bit. You realize between the 3 of us, we cover the world. The sun never sets on us, so you'll always get a reply to your LinkedIn.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Thanks a lot, everyone. Thank you.